Hi everyone, I hope you're okay and enjoying a little bit more freedom that we're seeing at the moment. Come to the second week in the sailing session. Just give me a nod or a chat just so I know that you can hear me okay. I will proceed on as if I'm assuming that you can. I've got smiley faces, so that's good. So let me just share my screen here and there we go. So last week we just talked about different sailing positions, really, just the basics of how boats sail and move. We looked at wind direction, we looked at power as an option. We also just looked at if you were pointing the nose of the boat direct into the wind, can you sail directly into the wind? And we looked at how to come alongside a boat. So obviously these two boats here, a good chance of making some movement. They can't sail directly into the wind. No boat really can, no sailing boat can. A powerboat obviously can, powerboat can go in any direction. But if as soon as this boat here, let's say, was to turn its nose into the wind, then it would find its sail position, I'll get the right one, would be in such a position that it would start to flap. And if you would, that's fine if you do an attack. So you obviously need to take your nose of the boat through the wind if you're doing that, but you need momentum to do that. You can't do that from a standing start. So your homework was to look at the weather for tonight at Eden Tarn. Tony and John, do you want to put your hands up and I'll invite you on stage and you can report back on your tables as to what the weather information you have found. So there we go. I'm going to hand the mic to John there. Hi, John.
Oh, yeah.
And there's Tony. There we go. Oh.
Here's looking at the weather forecast.
I can only have one person at a time, actually, there, so apologies. Tony, you go first then, and I'll bring John if you put your hand back up after that. So, Tony, what did your table find out in terms of the weather tonight?
Well, they did very well from to Denise, and they had a look at the Met Office and the club website, which comes up with the weather forecast. It's all you have to look on. And I think they looked at something else. I asked them to look at what the weather was doing tomorrow night. They quickly did that. So yeah.
Did they determine if it would be a good night to sail? Is it a safe night to sail?
I think they did. Yeah, I think it's going to be slightly warmer than it has been, and a nice gentle breeze for starting sailing. So yeah, it looked. Yeah. It looks like it's going to be a good night. I've got my video on now. So yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, let's hear from John then. Thank you very much, Tony. John, do you want to put your hand back up and I'll bring you back up on stage? Thank you, Tony. John, what did your table find? Sorry, I kicked you off there.
That's all right. Yep, so we were discussing where the wind was coming from. We had a bit of a discussion about which way around the clubhouse is and everything. And we decided it was coming from the northwest, but there weren't a whole lot of it. And there was a bit more of a discussion about where you would actually launch a boat from.
Excellent.
To be able to get into the wind rather than just being pushed back on the jetty. We decided the jetty outside the clubhouse, which is on the southwest side, would best.
I think, yeah, definitely. So looking at this weather map here, this indication here, this one, this kind of gives a good indication as to the direction of the wind. But it's a bit of a fancy graphic, that, and it's lovely. And you might just be led to believe that that is the actual way the wind will be going. But obviously, you've got an indication. The weather gives you a good indication of the strength and speed. The direction might vary a little bit when you get down there, and I think we're quite fortunate having Leeds Bradford Airport quite close. Is we get very detailed weather for that. So thank you, John. Okay, right. So thank you very much for that. I noticed that there seemed to be a little bit inconsistency between what's on the forecast of the Met Office, northeasterly there, and it seemed to be a kind of northwesterly position there. And I personally find the kind of colouring code in here quite hard on some of these things. So sometimes just numbers help quite well. So last week we talked about these kind of positions, and we talked about how you might sail and which direction you go. And John made a very good point there about referring to which jetty you would launch off. And I think just the reminder for everyone is that every time you turn up at the sailing club, the wind will be different from different directions, different strengths, and the weather itself was also to bear that in mind. Obviously, it's colder, you need to make different clothing choices, and we'll look a bit more at clothing again next week. Okay, so we're going to be talking tonight a bit more about bits of a boat. That's going to be the main kind of part of our session tonight. I'm going to talk you through some of these bits very quickly. I'm going to show you a quick video as well, and then you're going to go off in groups and you're going to do some labeling of them. So some of you who are familiar with boats might know some of the kind of more in-depth names of controls and sheets and various different ones. When you're working as a group, the idea is that someone will be there to kind of support you through this process. But just as a very basic kind of run through, a mast is probably one of the most kind of key parts of a sailing boat, because that's where the sails are effectively attached to. The boom is where the main sail is attached to, and that obviously swings across the boat. And we always talk about one of the important safety aspects of the boom is just avoiding that from clattering with your head and coming in contact with it, because it would hurt quite significantly. Less of an issue for when you're tacking, so that's when you're taking the nose of the boat through the wind. But when you're in a jibe, you do find that boom can be a lot more violent in the way that it swings across. Tonight, less so. Nice, gentle wind. I suppose one of the difficulties with the wind tonight would be potentially the frustration of sailing, thinking that you're not going anywhere. And I think tonight, especially at Eden, with all the trees and buildings around, you'd find different positions and different strengths of wind, different kind of directions as you move around the tarn. The wind does curve a little bit at Eden, so don't set off from the jetty thinking it's coming from this direction, and it might actually change a little bit further down the tarn. If you arrive a bit early and you've got a bit of time, take a walk around the tarn. It's always good to get a little bit of exercise, but also and get yourself warmed up, I suppose, for sailing, but also just to get a feel for the different directions you go around. We've got different sails. This boat here has 2 sails. Some boats only have 1 sail. So Topper, Pico, the lasers, they generally only have, well, they do only have 1 sail. Picos have a jib sail as well, but we occasionally use that. Some sails are masts are self-supporting, and you'll see that in a video with a Pico. Ones like this have shrouds which hold up the mast, and they actually can interfere with the direction of the boom. So your boom will only go out as far as that shroud will allow. Some boats have what we call a centerboard, like in this one. Others have dagger boards. Dagger boards generally are the kind of whole unit that you plunge down, separately stuff in the container, get the right one, you put it in your boat. Whereas a centerboard generally pivots within the boat, so you move that up and down accordingly. And we'll talk about setting those positions in a bit more detail later. You've got things like you've got the main sheet. So remember, we call ropes in boats main sheets or sheets. So we've got the main sheet, and then attached to the jib sail, the one at the front, we've got the jib sheet, and that obviously controls at either side in terms of strength. You've got blocks within the boat that just helps to increase your strength on the sail. So if you had a single line going straight to that boom and you were trying to shoot it in very strong winds, you would find that very difficult. But by using the blocks, you actually reduce the effort that's required on that. You pull in more rope through, but you're more sheet through, but you're reducing the effort and the energy that you're expending, because sailing can be a very tiring sport in very strong conditions. We've got the rudder there at the back. That's controlling the direction of the boat, and that's attached to the tiller. And then in most boats you have a tiller extension. That means you can just keep your weight forward. And with a sailing boat, we talk about the kind of the 5 essentials of sailing. So you've got the balance of the boat, so the left and right, the port and starboard balance. You always want to try and keep the boat flat. When you see these yachts out at sea on a right angle, on a real angle, that's not necessarily where you want to be in a dinghy. So try and keep the boat nice and flat. You've got the pitch kind of front and back as well, the trim of the boat, so you want it to keep it flatter there as well, or sometimes you actually want to move the weight further forward. And then there's the other controls lines as well. But the tiller extension allows you to move up the boat. If you sat too far at the back, then you can actually do things like drag your transom in the water, the back of the boat in the water, or the stern, and that will actually slow you down. So you obviously, one of the things we want to do with our sailing is try and keep it as efficiently as possible. So those are some of the basics. I'm going to do a quick video now. Hopefully this will work. Okay, I've not done it before. This will show you the setting up of Pico and talk you through some of the basics there, and then we'll go to the workshop exercise. So let's just load this up. Stop presenting. There we go. There we go. Okay, so we're going to set this boat up. So the first thing we're going to do is put the bung in the back. That stops the water getting into the boat. It's quite an important thing. It's worth doing at the start to make sure it's done. Next, we're going to put the mast up on this particular Pico. You don't have to put the mast up on all boats, just this particular one and toppers, for example. The sailing club, there are other boats like lasers where you also have to put the mast up as well. With the Pico, you slot the mast in, the arm comes round and you have to put a pin in. Now, typically you will find there's some way of securing the mast in place. In the Pico, it's just this little tin, so you put the pin in and there's something underneath. The toppers have a similar peg mechanism, and that just helps stop the mast falling out. Next, you've got your boom. Now with the boom, you might just have to unravel the main sheet from it, depending on how it's been stored. You'd stored in the container. Then you connect the kicker, so that'll be connected to the boom, and that helps keep the boom down. Just make sure that's checked okay. And you've got the main sheet there. Now you need to attach the main sheet at the back. And there's a little block on the traveller and a block that goes to the main sheet. You just need to make sure it's not twisted. Then you're going to need to put the main sheet through the main block. Run your hands through it, so make sure there's no knots or kinks or anything in it. Run it through the block, make sure it's going the right way so it clicks. Run it through again just to make sure that there's nothing twisted, everything's working fine. Find the end and put a figure of 8. And the figure of 8 is important to stop it from coming out from that block. Next, we're going to attach the elastic for the dagger board in this case, and that goes under the mast. The important thing to attach this so that if it does drop out of the boat, it doesn't float away. You don't lose it. There's no need to slot in at this stage. Then we're going to put the rudder in, and it's important to look here where you can put the rudder underneath the traveller so that the main sheet will travel over the top of the rudder. There's the rudder stock clicking into place, making sure that flap is holding it so it doesn't fall out. And you just need to make sure your line is clear. Okay, so that was just an example, really. So most boats have a similar kind of structure and setup. So toppers and Picos are very similar in terms of putting the mast up, as well as lasers. Herons, Enterprises, other boats like that just have a slightly different mechanism, put up the mainsail, etc. Glynis mentioned just in the chat about bungs. You're probably less likely to notice you've missed the bung on a Pico because the water will be going into the hull, like Glynis mentioned. With a Pico, you do notice it a lot sooner because there's a lot of water around your feet. Also worth looking inside the boat. Some boats have air tanks within the boat as well, where there might be bungs, drainage holes in there. Make sure they're done up. I've seen, and other members will recount instances where boats have gone over with the bungs open, or water has been able to get into the air tank and instantly significantly sunk the boat, and that's quite a challenge. So you're going to go back to your tables now, and I've got an exercise for you here. I'm going to share this screen. I'll put the code in the chat, but you've got so if you remember from last week came along, we have this whiteboard set up here. I'll put the code in here. So you go to this board here, and you should see this illustration, and there's all these different items here to click and drag and point to particular places. So I've done this one there for you. That should be relatively straightforward. These are for the beginners, and I'd like the novices to have a go at these ones here. You can have a go at those if you can do them very quickly, but as novices, then you should be in a position where you could do slightly a few more of these, and we'll be around to share. As you all come on board, I'll be able to see what you're doing, and then we do the feedback. Come back as a group, do as a feedback, and you can we can see which ones you got right, which ones you got wrong, which ones you got stuck on. So I'll stop now, and you can all get back together as a group. Do it individually, but talk to each other as you're doing it. Okay, I'll see you in a second. So why don't you have a go with this diagram here? Press pause, print screen, print it off, or do it on screen. Just label it up where you think the labels should be for the various different parts of the boat, and then press play again and you'll see the answers. Okay, I hope you found that a useful exercise. We'll have a quick look at the some examples, see how you got on. And then we'll do a very quick quiz, and then I know Tony's just going to give you a brief update as to what's been going on with the sailing. So let's have a look at, we're going to pick on Glynis here first, just to see how Glynis has got on. So lots of labels over the top, and you can orientate around those labels a little bit just to give yourself a bit more room, but that's fine. So mainsail, obviously correct. Jib sail, that's very good. Mast, main halyard, I think possibly is that one just there as opposed to the jib halyard, that one that's maybe a little bit over on there. And Glynis has had a go at the kind of sail positions as well, so that's very good. It's looking pretty good there. Painter was, I think Glynis has drawn on the painter. Yeah, unfortunately I did notice just that the painter was missing from it, so unfortunately that one disappeared. But the painter is the bit that goes to the front of the boat. Let's have a look at another example. Just here, so this is Karen. Clue, very good. So we've got the clue there. Outhaul, that's the pulls the line of the sail. Now there's a number of controls that I was talking on one of the tables. So the downhaul, the outhaul. So this line here, the kicker which connects and pulls the boom down. And in a way, there's the head as well. At the top, they control the shape of the sail. So different winds, different conditions, and different positions, you do want to have different sail positions. So it's worth Tim, can you post a picture on Whiteboard? Yeah, sorry, Clue, we'll check on spelling that one. Just have a look at the others. So I will post a picture of the kind of final answers on there. Let's have a look at Dane and Rowan, see how they got on. Jib, yep, in the right position. Boom, that's correct. Kicker, starboard. So we talk about luff, leech, head, foot, clue, and tack. So they're the kind of different positions. This is clue down here, tack down here. This is the leech of the sail. So it's where the wind luff heads out of the sail. Then the luff is home, and luff is quite an important one for us because we look at the luff to see it bulging, and that tells us if we're very close to the wind when we're close haul and beating up. And if the bulge is, if there's too much of a bulge behind it, then it's going to indicate that we're losing kind of shape. So it's a good one to look out for. So what I'll do is I will post a version of that which has got all the kind of final answers on it for you. Hi, so this is just an example of the final labelled up articles. So you've got two boats here with the easier and then the harder items on them. I just noticed when I was looking back at the video from the session that someone that I looked at, they had put the kicker instead of the centerboard, so just be mindful of that. So the centerboard or daggerboard is that fin that comes out the bottom. The kicker is the item that goes from the boom down to the bottom of the mast. That's the at an angle, and that holds the boom down. Feel free to peruse this, and if you've got any questions, then get in touch. Cheers. Just before we start the quiz, Tony, do you want to put your hand up and do you want to join us on stage and just give us an update on what's happening with sailing? You want to put your hand up, Tony? There we go. And the time.
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Hello. Hi, everyone. So, yeah, just a quick update on what we're doing for the Tuesday nights, actually getting out there sailing. We're getting everything ready. The rescue boats are one of working. We're steadily getting through the club boats to start getting them back on the water. So we're going to carry on with these virtual sessions for another 3 or 4 weeks, is it? And then we will be on the water. So assuming there's no hiccups with the virus, etc. So that's basically it, really. Yeah,
so plenty of opportunities.
So carrying on with these courses. So yeah, yeah.
So we've got 4 weeks of these, and we're going to be covering off other things such as sailing different directions, duck or dive. So we'll be talking about tacking and jibing as that part of that. doing a bit on rules on the road. So for the beginners, it will be just some of the basic rules, and for the novices, a bit more of the kind of more racing rules. And then we'll be looking at sailing a triangular course, and all within the virtual space. So thank you very much. Thank you, Tony, for
Fine.
so we'll do a quick quiz now. So get your fingers on the keyboards. I'm going to explain some ideas, and I want you to give me what you think is the answer to the part of the boat. So this one should be quite simple. So just type in the answer, and we'll see how we get on. So I swing from port to start and back again. So mind your head. Which part of the boat am I talking about there? Answers in chat. Boom, 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 boom. Wow. So, yep, boom. That's very good. Someone put crew there. Thanks for that. So the next one is from the top, you can see everywhere. What part of the boat am I talking about there? Mast. Excellent. Yep, that is the big mast on there. Now, there's a bit of a sneaky one because it wasn't actually on the illustration, so apologies for that. You tie me up and walk away. What part of the boat would I be talking about there? Painter, painter, painter. Yeah, so for whatever reason, the painter, this piece of string that's attached at the front of the boat that's used to attach it to the jetty is called a painter. Answers on a postcard if you know the answer to that one. You tie a figure of 8 in me and you never let go. What part of the boat am I talking about there? You tie a figure of 8 in me and you never let go. Main sheet, main sheet. Jib or main sheet, yeah, excellent. So it could be the jib or it could be the main sheet on that one. It's a good idea to do it in all those knots that could run through a block, because the last thing you want is that rope running through the block and you having to mess around with that. Okay, I push the water out of the way for you. What part of the boat is that? So I push the water out of the way for you. Bow. Glennis has gone with stern, but no, I'm looking for bow. It's the one at the front of the boat, so thank you for that one. I'm the last to follow you, but control where you go. What part of the boat might I be talking about there? Rudder, very good. Rudder, rudder, rudder. Yep, you've got these. I'm in the middle of the boat, and I go up and down. So what part might I be talking about there? Centerboard, dagger, centerboard. Yep, that's spot on. The one thing to remember there with the dagger board, so that's one that's completely disconnected, is make sure you attach it to the boat. I've seen instances where boats are capsized and the dagger board's floated away, and the dagger board is quite an important part of getting that boat upright. So we'll talk about that later. Some boats need me, others don't. I hang off the mast, but I can connect to the bow. So what part of the boat might I be talking there? So some boats need me, others don't. I hang off the mast, but I connect to the bow. So jib sail, job sail. Yep. Perfect, jib sail. Excellent. I stop the water from getting in. What part from today's session are we talking about there? It wasn't actually on the diagram, but we did mention it in the Pico one. So I stop the water from getting in. Hull, technically, yes, could be correct, Glennis, well done. But yes, bung is the idea. So have a look for bung or bong and make sure it doesn't come out. Well, I hope you found that useful. Let's just have a quick, so in terms of homework this week, I want you to find a piece of clothing for each day of the following weathers. So we need to come ready next session with a piece of clothing for appropriate weather for a cold day, a sunny day, and a windy day. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a piece of sailing clothing, but what would you wear on a cold day, a sunny day, and a windy day? And it doesn't necessarily have to be clothing. So think about something else if you're thinking about sunny days, but something you might wear. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you found it useful tonight. Feel free to stick around if you want to have a chat, if you've got any questions for me, but otherwise we'll see you next week. So thank you.